The rain hammered Chicago's Gold Coast like bullets against concrete as Vanessa Hinton pushed through the service entrance of the Meridian. Her white blouse clung to her shoulders, already soaked through from 3 seconds outside. The black skirt hung heavy with water. Both pieces of her uniform had seen better years, just like her luck, just like the hope she was clinging to by her fingernails. Inside, crystal and champagne. Outside, chaos and desperation. She'd been serving Chicago's elite for 18 months, refilling glasses for people who looked through her, clearing plates from tables where deals were made that could topple governments. The tips barely kept the lights on. They certainly wouldn't save Leo. Her brother had maybe 3 weeks. The experimental treatment wasn't covered by any insurance that existed in the real world. But there was another world, one that lived in the shadows of establishments like the Meridian. A world where pharmaceuticals moved without prescriptions and deals were closed with handshakes that could break bones. Murphy Foley's world. Everyone who worked at the Meridian knew him. The butcher of the loop. The manager cleared entire sections when he arrived. The chef prepared off-menu dishes without being asked. And the staff learned the rules fast. Don't approach. Don't interrupt. Don't exist too loudly in his vicinity. He wasn't just dangerous. He was gravity itself, pulling everything into his orbit. Tonight, Vanessa had watched him through the service window all evening, her heart hammering against her ribs. The pharmaceutical contact was supposed to be here. The man who could get what Leo needed. The deal that was her brother's only thread to survival. Then Murphy stood, his massive frame unfolding from the corner booth. He was moving toward the exit, his security detail flanking him like sharks. The deal was about to walk out into the storm. Vanessa followed, her feet carrying her through the kitchen and out into the deluge before she could second-guess herself. Rain turned the alley into a river. Neon signs bled red and blue across the wet asphalt. Murphy emerged 20 feet ahead, his dark suit absorbing the night. His tattooed hands were steady as he lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating the brutal architecture of his face. That's when Vanessa saw it. A red, dancing across Murphy's chest. Laser sight. Sniper's promise. Time stopped. The rain froze mid-fall. Everything crystallized into a single, terrible clarity. If Murphy Foley died tonight, so did her brother. She didn't think about pain. She didn't think about consequences. She only thought about Leo's face as her body launched forward, intercepting the line of fire. The shot cracked through the storm like thunder splitting the sky. Vanessa Hinton took the bullet meant for Chicago's most dangerous man, and everything changed in the space between one heartbeat and the next. The impact punched through her shoulder like a hammer made of fire. Vanessa's legs dissolved beneath her, the rain-slicked asphalt rushing up to meet her face. She never felt herself hit the ground, because Murphy Foley caught her. One moment she was falling, the next she was cradled against a chest that felt like carved oak. His tattooed hands were impossibly gentle as they pressed against the wound, trying to hold her blood inside her body. The rain mixed with the crimson pooling beneath them, turning the alley into a scene from a nightmare. "Boss, we need to move." Someone was shouting. Multiple someones. The world had erupted into chaos, security details swarming, cars screeching to formation, voices overlapping in urgent demands for protocol. Murphy's voice cut through it all like a blade through silk. Blackout. Now. 2 words. That's all it took. The security team scattered into coordinated precision, radios crackling with coded commands. Vanessa's vision swam, Murphy's face appearing and disappearing through the darkness that kept trying to pull her under. His jaw was set like stone, his eyes burning with something that looked nothing like gratitude and everything like fury. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, striding through the rain toward a car that materialized from nowhere. Not his usual convoy. Something anonymous. Something off the books. The safe house on. One of his men started.
No.
Murphy's voice was granite. She goes nowhere near our network. Get me Constantine. Vanessa tried to speak, to ask about Leo, about the deal, about anything that made sense. But her throat only produced a wet, broken sound. Murphy looked down at her, and for a fraction of a second, something in his expression cracked. "Stay with me," he ordered. Not a request. A command from a man who expected reality itself to obey him. The car tore through Chicago's underbelly, taking turns that couldn't exist on any map. Vanessa lost time in the spaces between streetlights. When she surfaced again, Murphy was carrying her down concrete stairs into a basement that smelled like antiseptic and old fear. A man in surgical scrubs stood waiting, his face pale, when he saw who was bleeding in Murphy's arms. "Mr. Foley, She doesn't die." Murphy laid her on a steel table under lights, so bright they burned. His tattooed hand wrapped around the doctor's wrist, gentle and absolute. "Ever. Do you understand me, Constantine? Whatever it costs. Whatever it takes. She doesn't die." The doctor's Adam's apple bobbed. "I understand." Murphy finally released him, but he didn't leave. He stood there, soaked through, rain dripping from his hair onto the clinic floor, watching as Constantine's hands began the desperate work of keeping Vanessa Hinton tethered to the living world. She'd taken his bullet. Now he was breaking every rule he'd ever lived by to make sure she survived it. Vanessa woke to silence, so complete it felt like being buried alive.
No rain. No voices. No chows.
Just the steady beep of a monitor counting her heartbeats like they were currency she couldn't afford to spend. The room was small, concrete, windowless. A clinic built for people who couldn't afford to be found. The fluorescent light overhead hummed with a kind of permanence that suggested she'd been here longer than minutes. Her shoulder throbbed beneath pristine bandages, the pain sharp and clarifying. 18 hours, her body told her. Maybe more. The door opened without sound, and Murphy Foley filled the frame. He'd changed. The rain-soaked suit was gone, replaced by something immaculate, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, not a thread out of place. His dark hair was combed back, his tattooed hands folded in front of him like a businessman at a board meeting. Only his eyes betrayed anything. They studied her with an intensity that felt like being dissected. "You're awake." Not a question. A statement of fact from a man who probably knew the exact moment her consciousness had returned. Vanessa's throat was sandpaper.
"Lao
is fine." Murphy moved into the room with the controlled grace of an apex predator. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, his presence somehow making the small space even smaller. "Already receiving treatment. The experimental protocol you were trying to buy. He's had his first infusion." The relief hit her so hard, she nearly choked on it. "How? The drugs Constantine used to save your life?" Murphy's expression remained unreadable, carved from stone. "They were part of a shipment meant for distribution, worth about $300,000 on the street. I had him use the entire supply." Vanessa stared at him. $300,000 worth of black market pharmaceuticals, pumped into her veins to pull her back from the edge of death. "Your brother's treatment will cost significantly less," Murphy continued, his tone conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. "Roughly $90,000 over 6 months. I've secured it. Paid in full. He's in a private facility under a different name, with security that would make the Secret Service jealous." "Why?" The word came out broken.
"I'm nobody.
I'm just. You took a bullet meant for me." Murphy leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time, something flickered behind that unreadable mask. "Do you understand how rare that is, Vanessa? Someone who sees death coming and steps into it anyway? Not for money. Not for loyalty bought and paid for. But because you decided my life was worth more than yours." "It wasn't." She tried to sit up, wincing. "I needed you alive. For Leo. For the deal." "Yes." Murphy's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on someone else. On him, it looked dangerous. "You needed me. And now, Vanessa Hinton, you have me. The debt is paid. Your brother lives. And you. He stood, smoothing his suit jacket with those tattooed hands. You belong to me now. The words hung in the sterile air like smoke. Vanessa's fingers twisted in the thin clinic sheet, her mind racing through the mathematics of survival she'd been calculating for months. 300,000 for her life. 90,000 for Leo's. Numbers that made her dizzy. I can't pay you back, she said, hating how small her voice sounded. Not in 10 lifetimes. Not in 20. Murphy turned back from the door, and something almost like amusement crossed his face. You think this is about money? Everything's about money. Not this. He moved closer again, and Vanessa had to fight the instinct to shrink back. You bought my life with yours, Vanessa. That's not a transaction you pay back in cash. That makes you mine to keep. The possessive simplicity of it should have terrified her. Maybe it did. But underneath the fear was something else, the sick realization that she'd traded one kind of desperation for another. The poverty that had been crushing her for years, the loan sharks circling like vultures, the constant terror of losing Leo. All of it was gone, replaced by a golden cage with Murphy Foley holding the key. My apartment. Already cleared. Your belongings are in my penthouse. Murphy checked his watch, the gesture casual, as if he relocated people's entire lives every day. Maybe he did. You'll stay there. Under guard. Under protection. I'm a prisoner. You're alive. His eyes locked on hers, dark and absolute. The moment you stepped in front of that bullet, you became visible. The people who wanted me dead now know your face, your name, everything about you. My enemies don't forgive interference, Vanessa. They don't forget. The implications settled over her like concrete. She'd saved his life and painted a target on her own back in the same breath. So, I'm in danger. You're a known target, Murphy corrected. There's a difference. One means you're vulnerable. The other means you're under my protection. And I protect what's mine. There was that word again.
Mine.
It should have made her angry. Should have made her fight. But Leo was safe, receiving treatment that would save his life, protected by security she could never have afforded. Her baby brother would live because she'd made a split-second decision in the rain. How long? She asked quietly. Murphy straightened his cufflinks, the tattooed letters on his knuckles briefly visible. Until the thread is eliminated. Could be weeks. Could be months. And if I refuse? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and his expression softened by a fraction so small she almost missed it. Then you'll die, Vanessa. And everything you sacrificed will mean nothing. The truth was a blade between her ribs. She'd stepped into his world. There was no stepping back out. When do we leave? She whispered. Murphy's lips curved.
Now.
If you can't stand people like loan sharks and corrupt politicians who abuse the desperate, hit subscribe now, trolls won't. The penthouse was everything Vanessa had never let herself dream about. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline. Marble floors that reflected the city lights like a mirror. Furniture that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. It was beautiful. It was suffocating. Murphy stood at the window, a glass of scotch in his tattooed hand, watching the city like a king surveying his kingdom. 3 days she'd been here. 3 days of silence and guards at every exit and questions burning holes in her chest. Why? The word exploded out of her before she could stop it. Why risk everything for a maid you'd never even spoken to? He didn't turn. I told you.
No.
Vanessa moved closer, her shoulders still aching beneath the expensive silk shirt someone had left in her room. Don't give me that you're mine to keep speech again. You could have let me die and walked away clean. Nobody would have questioned it. So, why did you break protocol? Why did you carry me yourself? Why did you use $300,000 worth of product to save someone who serves drinks for a living? The silence stretched so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then Murphy turned, and the look on his face made her breath catch.
Raw.
Unguarded.
Human.
7 years ago, I had a lieutenant. Trusted him with everything. My operations, my money, my life. His voice was low, controlled, but something violent simmered underneath. He was also seeing a woman. A civilian. A teacher. She had no idea what he was, what I was. I didn't care. I don't involve innocence. Vanessa waited, her heart hammering. He betrayed me to a rival organization. Set up a meeting. An ambush. Murphy's jaw clenched. I survived. My security team eliminated the threat. But the teacher, Elena, she'd found out what he was doing. She came to warn me. She died, Vanessa whispered. In the crossfire. 18 seconds. That's how long it took for her to bleed out in my arms while I waited for an ambulance that couldn't navigate the chaos. Murphy's fingers tightened around the glass. I swore that day I'd never let someone innocent pay for my world again. Never. He moved closer, his dark eyes locked on hers with an intensity that felt like lightning. Then you stepped in front of a bullet meant for me. Not because someone paid you. Not because you were loyal to my organization. But because you saw death coming and decided my life mattered more than yours. His voice dropped to something almost reverent. Your sacrifice was the first real thing I've seen in a decade, Vanessa. It makes you the only one I trust. That's insane, she breathed. Yes. Murphy's lips curved into something broken and beautiful. Welcome to my world. The space between them felt electric, charged with something neither of them could name. Two people bound by blood and desperation, and a choice made in the rain. I'm still terrified of you, Vanessa admitted. Good. Murphy raised his glass in a dark salute. Fear keeps you alive. Trust keeps you honest. We'll need both. The next morning, Murphy spread the files across the dining table like a dealer laying out a hand of cards.
Surveillance photo.
Financial records. Documents with official seals that shouldn't exist outside government vaults. Vanessa's coffee went cold in her hands as she stared at the evidence of a war she'd stumbled into. Senator David Vance. Murphy tapped a photograph of a man in his 50s, silver-haired and smiling at a charity gala. He looked like everyone's idea of a public servant, trustworthy, principled, the kind of face that won elections. Recognize him? He's always on the news.
Anticorruption.
Tough on crime. Vanessa's stomach turned. He's running for re-election on a platform of cleaning up Chicago. He's cleaning up all right. Cleaning up his competition. Murphy pulled out another photo, the same senator shaking hands with men in expensive suits at what looked like a private airfield. Vance runs the largest arms trafficking operation on the East Coast. Weapons moving from Europe through Chicago to conflict zones worldwide. He's made $200 million in the last 3 years alone. The numbers were incomprehensible. How is that possible? Because he's untouchable. Murphy's voice carried the weight of frustration. He uses clean associates. Businessmen with legitimate companies, lawyers with spotless records, philanthropists who donate to children's hospitals. People you'd never suspect. They move his inventory through legal channels disguised as industrial equipment, construction materials, agricultural supplies. Vanessa studied the surveillance photos. Men in boardrooms. Women at art galleries. Everyone looked successful, normal, innocent. The hit on me was his move, Murphy continued. I control the ports, the routes, the distribution networks he needs to expand. He wants my territory. And now, his dark eyes fixed on her. Now he knows I broke protocol for you. Used my own product. Moved you into my home. Protected you. The implication hit her like ice water.
I'm Leveres.
You're proof I have a weakness. Murphy's jaw tightened. In my world, weakness is blood in the water. It draws sharks. Vanessa set down her coffee, her hands trembling. So what happens now? Now we play his game better than he does. Murphy gathered the files, his movements controlled and precise. Vance thinks his clean exterior makes him invincible. He thinks his associates are invisible because they blend into respectable society. But everyone has a crack, Vanessa. Everyone bleeds. And you're going to find it. We're going to find it. Murphy corrected, his gaze intense. You want to know why I'm keeping you close?
This is why.
You see what others miss. You saw the laser sight. You saw the threat when trained security didn't. That instinct? That awareness? It's rare. It's valuable. She was more than leverage. She was a weapon he intended to use. What if I refuse? Murphy's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then Senator Vance will eventually find you, and everything you sacrificed, your freedom, your safety, Leo's future, will be for nothing. The choice wasn't a choice at all. It never had been. Comment no more arms trade if you believe Senator Vance's clean exterior hides pure evil. Only those siding with the darkness will stay silent. The video feed was encrypted, routed through 6 servers across 3 continents, but the image was crystal clear. Leo sat propped up in a hospital bed, his color better than Vanessa had seen in months. A nurse was helping him with lunch, and he was laughing at something she said. Actually laughing. Vanessa's hand pressed against the monitor screen, her throat closing around emotions too big for words. He was alive. He was getting better. The hollow terror that had lived in her chest for 18 months finally loosened its grip. The second infusion is tomorrow. Murphy's voice came from the doorway, low and careful. His doctors say the response is better than they hoped. She couldn't speak, could only nod, tears sliding down her face in hot tracks. She'd been so certain she'd lose him, had mapped out every terrible possibility, prepared herself for the worst, bargained with gods she didn't believe in. And now Leo was eating lunch and laughing and living. Murphy crossed the room, and when his hand touched her shoulder, the gentleness undid something in her. She turned and buried her face against his chest, the expensive fabric of his shirt absorbing her tears while her body shook with relief so intense it felt like breaking apart. "Thank you," she managed between gasps. Thank you, Vanessa." His arms came around her, steady and solid, and impossibly warm. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." She pulled back enough to look at him, and what she saw in his face made her breath catch. The armor was gone. The controlled mask he wore like a second skin had cracked open, revealing something raw and human and vulnerable beneath. "You make me feel things I thought were dead," Murphy said quietly, his tattooed hand coming up to cup her face. His thumb traced the path of her tears. "I've spent 7 years building walls, Vanessa. Making myself into something that doesn't break, doesn't feel, doesn't risk. And then you." His voice fractured. "You threw yourself in front of a bullet for me. You trusted me with your brother's life. You look at me like I'm a person instead of a monster." His forehead dropped to rest against hers. "You're destroying every rule I've ever lived by." "Murphy, I'm terrified of what you do to me," he whispered. The confession hung between them, fragile and fierce. Vanessa's hand moved to his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath her palm. They were standing at the edge of something that would change everything, and they both knew it. Murphy's control shattered like glass. He kissed her with a desperation that stole her breath, his hands threading through her hair as he pulled her closer. It wasn't gentle. It was need and fear, and something too powerful to name. 2 people who'd seen death and chosen life and found each other in the wreckage. Vanessa kissed him back like he was oxygen, like he was salvation, like he was the answer to questions she'd been too afraid to ask. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Murphy's thumb traced her bottom lip. "No going back now," he murmured. "Good," Vanessa whispered.
"I don't want to."
The alarm shattered the moment, like a gunshot through glass. Murphy's entire body went rigid, his hand instinctively moving to the weapon holstered beneath his jacket. The penthouse security system flashed red across every screen, and his phone lit up with incoming calls that made his expression turn to stone. "What is it?" Vanessa's voice was steady despite the ice flooding her veins. Murphy answered the phone, listened for 3 seconds, and ended the call. When he looked at her, she saw something she'd never seen in his eyes before.
Fear.
Leo's facility. Someone breached the perimeter security. They didn't get inside, but his jaw clenched. "There's a leak in my network." Someone fed them the location. The world tilted. Everything they'd built, every sacrifice made, suddenly balanced on a knife's edge again. "We move now." Murphy was already striding toward the bedroom, issuing commands into his phone. "Full extraction protocol. Leo goes to the secondary location. You come with me to—"
No.
The word stopped him cold. He turned, incredulous. "Vanessa, this isn't negotiable. If they know where Leo is, they know you're the leverage. Vance will." "Will what?" "Come after me." She moved toward him, her mind racing through possibilities with a clarity born from weeks of watching Murphy operate. "He already knows I'm here. He already knows I matter to you. Running won't change that." "Then what do you suggest?" Murphy's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "We can't just wait for him to." "We don't wait. We go to him first." Vanessa's heart hammered, but her voice remained level. "The Meridian. I still have my job there, right? They never formally fired me." Murphy stared at her like she'd suggested jumping off the balcony. "You want to go back? To where you're exposed? Where Vance's associates won't see me coming?" She stepped closer, her hand finding his. "Murphy, think about it. What did you say about his operation? He uses clean people in respectable places. Business dinners. Charity events. Places like the Meridian." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed immediately by resistance. "Absolutely not. You're not bait." "I'm not bait. I'm the key." Vanessa squeezed his hand. "You said it yourself. I see things others miss. I'm invisible to people like Vance's associates. Just another maid serving drinks, clearing tables. I can get close. I can listen. I can find the crack in his operation that you need. They could kill you. They're already trying to kill everyone I love." Her voice broke slightly. "Let me fight back, Murphy. Let me be more than something you protect. Let me be your partner." The silence stretched between them, tension and trust warring in his expression. Finally, Murphy pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead in something between a kiss and a prayer. "You go in," he said quietly, "but you move on my command. You wear a wire. You follow my extraction protocols. And the second something feels wrong, you abort. Deal?" Vanessa looked up at him, seeing the cost of this agreement written in every line of his face.
Deal.
Hit subscribe right now and like this video if you trust Vanessa's courage over Murphy's caution. Don't let your laziness keep you from seeing her win. The utility rooms smelled like bleach and old mops. Vanessa stood with her back to the storage shelves, the wire capturing every sound as the 3 men filed in and closed the door. The space suddenly felt very small. "So." The leader leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You hear things. Tell us what kind of things." "Depends what you want to know. We represent certain interests that value information." His smile was predatory now. "Shipping schedules.
Personnel mouvement.
Names of people who might be problematic to our operations." "Operations like Senator Vance's?" Vanessa kept her voice innocent. "The arms shipments moving through Meridian Holdings and Vance's shell companies?" The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. The men's expressions hardened, and one of them moved toward the door, blocking her exit. "Where did you hear that name?" The leader's voice was silk over steel. "I told you. I hear things." Vanessa's heart raced, but she held her ground.
Baltic Transport Solutions.
Meridian Holdings. Vanguard International. All registered to different addresses, all routing through the same corrupted customs officials Vance has on his payroll. You're making serious accusations.
I'm stating facts.
She watched their faces, saw the moment they decided she was a threat. Facts that lots of people would pay good money for. The leader's hand moved toward his jacket, and Vanessa knew she'd pushed far enough. Now, she whispered. The door exploded inward. Murphy's team flooded the room in tactical precision, weapons drawn, commands shouted. Federal agents poured through the Meridian's entrance, badges flashing. Outside, vehicles surrounded the building in a choreographed strike that had been planned to the second. The three men hit the floor, hands behind their heads, while Murphy appeared in the doorway. His eyes found Vanessa immediately, dark and fierce and blazing with something between fury and pride. Target secured, someone said into a radio. Senator Vance's residences are being raided simultaneously. We've got everything. Vanessa's legs nearly gave out. Murphy crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her against him, his hand cradling the back of her head. You're insane, he breathed into her hair. Brilliant and insane. Did we get him? We got everything. Murphy pulled back enough to look at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, he smiled. Really smiled. You just dismantled a $200 million empire with 15 minutes and a wire. If you believe in facing evil head-on, hit subscribe. Only manipulators and fearmongers skip the fight for justice. The penthouse had never felt so quiet. Chicago glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights reflecting off glass and steel like a constellation fallen to earth. Vanessa stood at the window, still wearing the maid uniform, the wire now removed and lying on the marble counter like evidence of a life she'd just left behind. Murphy's reflection appeared in the glass behind her. He'd ditched the tactical vest, but tension still radiated from every line of his body. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then his control finally shattered. Don't ever do that again. His voice was raw, stripped of all authority. He turned her to face him, his tattooed hands gripping her shoulders with a gentleness that contradicted the storm in his eyes. Don't ever put yourself in danger like that. Don't ever. Murphy. I watched them corner you, watched them move toward you, and I couldn't breathe, Vanessa. For the first time in 7 years, I couldn't think, couldn't strategize, couldn't do anything except pray that you'd give me the signal before. His forehead dropped to touch hers. I've faced down rival organizations. I've survived assassination attempts. I've built an empire from blood and will. But those 15 minutes waiting for your signal were the most terrifying of my life. Vanessa's hands came up to frame his face, feeling the slight tremor in his jaw.
I'm okay.
We won. We did. Murphy's laugh was broken. You walked into a room with 3 armed men and took apart a senator's empire with nothing but your mind and your courage. You were magnificent.
You were terrifying.
You were, his voice cracked. You're the only peace I've ever known, Vanessa. The confession hung between them, more vulnerable than any kiss, more intimate than any touch. This man who'd built walls around his heart, who'd turned himself into something untouchable and feared, was standing in front of her completely defenseless. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. Not from you. Not from this life. Not from whatever comes next. It's a dangerous life. I know. Vanessa smiled, something fierce and free blooming in her chest. But I'm not a victim anymore. I'm not a captive. I'm not someone who needs saving.
No.
Murphy's thumb traced her cheekbone. You're the woman who saved me. He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promises that had no words. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vanessa looked around the penthouse, the marble floors, the expensive furniture, the security system that never slept. This golden cage that had once felt like a prison. I'm home, she realized aloud, the truth settling into her bones with unexpected certainty. In the chaos, in the danger, in the shadows with you, this is home. Murphy pulled her close, his heartbeat steady beneath her palm. Then welcome home, Vanessa Hinton. Welcome to our empire. Outside, Chicago kept breathing. Inside, two people who'd found each other in bullets and rain and blood held on tight, ready to face whatever came next. Together. Comment, I stand for loyalty if you believe Vanessa and Murphy's bond is strong enough to survive the Mafia life.